If there is a better ministry team anywhere, I want to meet them. Is that right? It was late in the career of the Apostle Paul that he wrote the 2 letters to Timothy. Now, there is some debate about the authorship, but if the great apostle is the author, he would have been about 60 when he wrote this letter. And he would have been about 65 when he died. I mention this because I think his life stage is an important part of this letter to Timothy. Because it's a loving letter of hard-earned pastoral wisdom, and it's written with a sense of urgency, like he's trying to say, please, please, please listen. Please. I know what will make your life better. I've been there, and I know. Please, please listen. But you and I know we don't always listen to good counsel when it comes. More often than not, we slough it off. This semester of adult ed in our Speedle U, which is our Wednesday night adult education program, we've been focusing on faith development and what is needed at each life stage. When I was walking Bates around earlier, I reminded us that in his first stage of faith development, it's about protection and love and trust. When we hold him and love on him, he is learning at some primal level that the people of God love him and that church is a safe place. And later we will indoctrinate him. We'll teach him the stories. We will teach him right from wrong. And then as his capacity grows, we will start talking about difficult decisions, tough life choices, discernment. But my point is, at each stage, there is a different faith task, and there are different life tasks at each stage of our living for those of us who are paying attention. My daughter, Haley, tells my 2-year-old grandson, Cooper, not to jump up and down on the sofa. And he's not always paying attention. But she's further along. He just sees the fun in what he's doing, and it's fun. But she knows the danger that accompanies that fun. She sees the danger in his behavior. She tells him he needs to stop. Now, she's not teaching a skill here because he knows how to jump just fine. He knows how to fall just fine. She's teaching wisdom. Not jumping on the sofa, not running into the street. These are the things he needs to know at this life stage. But her job is to pass along what she knows is dangerous behavior. My friend Truett Gannon, who you've heard me talk about before, longtime pastor of Smoke Rise Baptist Church. About every third time we're together, Truett says to me, "Doc, I want you to start right now being kind to the old man you're going to be." Now, I'm not sure exactly what he's trying to say. I don't know if he wants me to put away more money or lose 20 pounds. I probably ought to ask. But there is some danger ahead that in his great wisdom, he's trying to keep me from. And the Apostle Paul, now older, now wiser, full of experience about life and ministry, is writing to this young colleague, Timothy, and he wants to impart this centrally important lesson about how to live a satisfying, rewarding life. He's not being preachy, he is being kind. This is a caring letter. Haley tells Cooper to stop jumping on the sofa because she cares about him, not because she's being mean. She knows. She knows the danger lurking. She's had experience with the sharp edges of the sofa table. She has been more than one time to the hospital for bandages and splints. She wants something different for him. And Paul is talking to the younger Timothy, and he just wants him to keep from hurting himself. But he might be headed down a path that's dangerous. By the way, Some wisdom we must grow old to get to, but growing old doesn't guarantee you get wise. There are some old people who are really not wise at all. I'm not going to ask you to stand, but there are. But some people just decide they don't want to learn new things from the people who are further downstream. But there's some wisdom that even the most eager learner must get older to acquire. Early in my career, I wanted to be a pastor. I went to seminary wanting to be a pastor. Graduated college in 3 years, got married, went to seminary 3 years, came back to Atlanta to do a hospital residency. I'm ready to be a pastor. I had the degree. I'd even served a church for a little while. But I was 24 years old. And it turns out, as much as I thought I was ready, nobody wanted a 24-year-old pastor. It was not that I didn't have the degrees in hand. I had the education, I had the technical skills, but they knew that I just didn't have enough life experience yet to take on the task. Because some wisdom is developmental. You must be a certain age to catch some of it. So here's my confession. I've read this passage from 1 Timothy over and over and over across my life, but I was either not developmentally ready to catch the wisdom, or I just wasn't open to the wisdom of it at all. But I get it now. For the first time this week, working on this passage, I got all the way into the deep, resonant wisdom of what Paul was trying to get Timothy to hear. Let me read part of it again and see if you can listen all the way down to the depths of this wisdom. There is great gain in godliness combined with contentment. We brought nothing into the world. We take nothing out of it. But if we have food and clothing, we'll be content with these. But those who want to be rich fall into the temptation and are trapped by many senseless and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. But as for you, shun all of this. Pursue righteousness, godliness, faith, love, endurance, gentleness. Do you feel the urgency in this? This older pastor is trying to get him to get it. It's about faith and love and gentleness. All of those other pursuits that you think are so blame important will pile up and kill you if you're not careful. What matters is virtue and character and righteousness. But can't you see the young Timothy with his fingers in his ears, right? You've tried to tell other young folks about this. Blah, blah, blah. Who knows, maybe Timothy's buying a bass boat on time. Paul might have sensed that Timothy has bought the lie that others in his generation are telling. And it's a lie that has passed from generation to generation, and it is this: the more you acquire, the more it will satisfy the hunger in your soul. And so many people are living life so furiously, they look like they're fighting snakes in a phone booth every time you see them. They're working, everything they do is in such a fury because they know that they'll be happy with what's next. And what Paul knows out of his wisdom is that you can only be happy with what is now. I have seen people live what Paul is talking about. You have too. We have seen mature Christian people who were finally set free from the chaos, finally set free from this grabbing for more and next. I have seen mature Christian people who, like Paul, have finally figured out that content always trumps success. I mentioned that Paul was about 30 when he wrote this, or about 60 when he wrote this letter to Timothy. Leo Tolstoy was 58 years old when he wrote his short story, How Much Land Does a Man Need? A lot of y'all have read that, and you know the story is real similar. So this guy, Tolstoy, at 58, same life stage, is using his medium of short story to tell the same wisdom. Some of you, let me give you the gist of the story for those of you for whom it might have been a while. A peasant named Pahom works hard for his family, but he wants to own his own land, because if he owned his own land, things would be different and they'd be better. And eventually, an estate gets busted up into smaller pots, and he's able to own a small piece of that land. He's able to buy a small plot. He made money on that piece of land, but as the story says, his heart was still filled with desire. And he heard about another region where land was cheap. So he declared, why should I suffer in this narrow hole if one can live so well elsewhere? So he sells what he has, he moves, he buys a bigger piece of land, he's making even more money, but then he hears from a man returning from the Bashkirs far away that he had bought 13,000 acres of land with only 1,000 rubles. So Parham sees a chance to increase tenfold what he has right now. He sells this land and goes there. He wants to buy more land so he'll be more successful. He meets with the chiefs in the Bashkirs, and he finds out about the price of the land. But they had a peculiar way of pricing the land. For 1,000 rubles, he could have all the land he could walk in a day. He could walk as far in any direction as he wanted to and place stakes. And at the end of the day, as much land as he could walk off, he could own for 1,000 rubles. But the chief said, you must return here by sundown. He put his hat on the ground and said, when the sun goes down, you've got to be back at my hat. If you're not, you lose all of your 1,000 rubles. So Pahom takes off. He takes off walking briskly with purpose. He is on the move. He's making stakes on land, more land than he can imagine. He is covering so much land while the day is long. He keeps walking and staking, and then the sun starts to fade. It gets late, and he realizes time is short. He's got to make a return trip, and as he starts to make the return trip, his legs start to fail. He stops to rest, but he realizes he doesn't have time to stop and rest. He's got to be back by sundown. He takes off his boots, his coat, his cap. He throws those away. He's got to get back. He's so exhausted. He thinks, what am I going to do if I've grabbed too much? Ruin the whole thing if I don't get there before the sun sets. And his fear, his heart starts racing more. He gets even more breathless. His shirt is soaked. His pants are sticking to him. He tries. He sees now at a great distance the hat that's on the ground. He's trying to get there before the sun gets down. People are cheering for him now. He's got a cheering section. The light is fading fast. The cap is getting closer. He finally wills himself forward. His legs are giving away beneath him. Right toward the end, he falls forward, reaches the cap with his hands, just in the nick of time, just before the sun goes down. And when Pahom's servants came to help him up off the ground, blood was flowing from his mouth because Pahom was dead. The servant dug a grave right there, long enough to bury Pahom in. It was 6 feet from his head to his heels. Turns out that's all the land he needed. Now, if that story doesn't resonate in Buckhead, I am watching so many people I love selling their 100 acres to buy 1,000 acres. And it's like Haley watching Cooper jump up and down on the sofa. It looks like so much fun, but she knows the danger that's in it. She knows how it can end. And there's so many people in our circle of care who are reading books and listening to podcasts and taking classes to figure out how to get rich, how to turn their 100 acres into 1,000 acres, and killing themselves. The book Think and Grow Rich has sold over 100 million copies worldwide, and I bet all the books on contentment ever written hadn't sold 1 million. Hurry, get more. Hurry, get more. And even in the age of Paul, even in the age of Tolstoy, the lure, the seduction that more stuff will satisfy you was leading. And Paul, at the age of 60, knows it's a lie. That the only people in the world who are living fully are the people who are content. There were 2 of you not paying attention, so I'm going to say that again. The only people who are living the life you want to live are not rich people. They are content people. We have to learn to build our happy home and our happy life on our 100 acres and turn our attention to who we are becoming and not what we are acquiring. Listen again. We brought nothing into the world. We take nothing out of it. But if we have food and clothing, we'll be content. But those who want to be rich fall into temptation, are trapped by many senseless and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Paul is urging you from his stage in life to stop jumping on the sofa. It looks like fun, but you will hurt yourself. The pursuit that endures is the pursuit that is content, happy, giving, and seeking the wisdom that we pass on again. Amen. And the beginning of that wisdom starts with the life of Christ living within us, speaking that wisdom through God's Holy Spirit into our lives. And if that Spirit of God is speaking to you today, I invite you to respond as we stand and sing, and let us all get to celebrate together what God is doing in your life. Let's sing.